Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about drawing faces. And I'm going to give you some rules of thumb on how to draw cartoon faces. Actually, when you draw cartoon faces, you can draw eyes, ears, nose, mouth, anywhere you want. And so, for instance, if I wanted to come into this face and draw, I don't know, big eyes up here and a little nose down here and a face, you can do that, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to talk about the general rule of thumb of where to place the eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. And so you can understand where things typically go, even within human beings. That changes from person to person. But the rule of thumb is, if we draw a straight line down the center of the face, and then we cut from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, we cut that about in half, that, believe it or not, is going to be about where the eyes go. And if we take that point from the center of the face down to the chin and cut that in half, that's going to be about where the bottom of the nose is. And if we cut the remaining segment in half, that's going to be where the upper lip goes. So let's go ahead and try this on a couple faces and see if it's even close to what really happens. So there's the bottom of the nose, here's the mouth. I'll go ahead and put little lips in here, nose, and there's the eyes. And so let's go ahead and see. We've got a couple of faces in here. If we wanted to, we could take a look at, let's take a look at this lady. Her face kind of matches. If I wanted to, I could kind of line it up perfectly by maybe tilting it a little bit this way and bringing it down. Okay, now look, her eyes, the top of her head to the bottom of her chin, roughly. Her eyes are here, okay, right about halfway through the head. If we cut that part in half, we have the bottom of the nose, and we have where the mouth is. So her face is pretty symmetrical, and she follows that rule pretty closely. Not everybody does. Let's look at another example. I don't know who this person is, but I also got his picture from the internet. I think he's a soccer player. And so if we look at him, we can see he doesn't really line up. He's got a very short distance from the center between his eyes down to the nose, and his nose and his mouth. This distance is much smaller. And so even though his chin and the top of his head line up, his face is just proportioned differently. So if I was going to draw a cartoon of this guy, I might want to change that and sort of exaggerate the parts that differ from what we'll call the norm. So let's look at this character. This is somebody you may recognize. His name, he played a character, actually I don't know the actor's name, but he played a character named Sheldon Cooper on a show called The Big Bang. And if we line up his eyes, we can see his nose and his mouth line up pretty well. Let me go ahead and tilt his head a little bit, bring him back up. And so we can see, not exactly, but pretty well, he lines up from the top of his head down to the bottom of his chin and so forth. Let me go ahead and give one more example. This is a fellow who was famous even before I was born. Oops, I don't want to take that guy. This guy's name is Stan Laurel, and he was a comedian. He was very funny when my father was a child, and here's a caricature of him. Notice that his face wouldn't line up exactly because from the bottom of his nose to his mouth is a very short distance. It's not halfway between his chin. He's got a very big chin, and so some artists noticed that and drew this picture. So the artist exaggerated the thing. It was different, but he had a good sense of what the norm was, and everybody varies from that norm a little bit. And so when you draw a picture of somebody or a cartoon, you might want to exaggerate that norm a little bit. Okay, so for our first character drawing, we're going to start with an oval, and we're going to take our pencil. We're going to do a light drawing. We're going to take our pencil, and I'm going to even light more than this. But you can draw really lightly. Just draw a line down the center, a horizontal line about in the middle where the eyes are going to go. Cut this segment in half about where the nose is going to go here, and then the mouth. And use that as your guideline. And so then we're going to take our pen, and we're going to draw some eyes. So let's just start with some really simple eyes. I think I'll go ahead and just do ovals for the eyes. And big dots. And a nose. And I'll do a big smile with ears. And something that I'm going to encourage you not to do, don't draw each individual strand of hair, but just think about hair as a kind of a shape. So I'm just going to come up here, and this person's going to have curly hair. It's going to go up above the top of his head, and here it's going to come down. We're going to talk about shading later, but here's an example of a character, and I put a little bulb in his chin. Maybe I can put some little creases there in his mouth, maybe even open his mouth up a little bit. And there is an example of are my first character. So you are going to go ahead and draw some different characters using these guidelines in place, and then once you get comfortable with that, you can go ahead and start changing them. For instance, let's go ahead and try one where we do eyes a little bit higher. Maybe this person's going to have a bigger chin. So again, I will go ahead and have the eyes up here, maybe smaller eyes. And the nose is going to go up here. And maybe the mouth is going to come up here. He's got a little tiny mouth. And now you can draw the ears in. And maybe this person's going to have hair that's more straight hair. And like that. So you can see a different expression on his face. And don't forget the eyebrows. We can express a lot of emotions with eyebrows. So this person's going to have his eyebrows up high. And again, using those basic proportions, that's going to help me figure out where to place the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, eyebrows, and hair. Let's do one more. So this guy is going to be, let's say this is a woman, and so she's going to have eyes that are, maybe have eyelashes out here. But again, notice that the eyes are on this line, and the distance between them is about the width of a single eye. And then over here I can go ahead and put an eyeball in. Maybe I can shade part of that in. And she's going to have a little tiny nose. And maybe a little bit bigger lips. Maybe she's going to have lips up higher. So she's going to have a bigger chin. So she's going to have cheekbones. Cheekbones here. And so now maybe her hair is going to be, I don't know, maybe she's going to have kind of wild, crazy hair. It comes up like that. And there she is. And so she is a little bit more feminine. And now her eyebrows are going to come up like that. So there's an example of 3 different examples of characters using that same kind of proportion, that typical proportion, eyes in the center of the head, nose, and mouth. And so today's assignment is to just practice that with, come up with several different characters. Oh, this guy doesn't have any eyebrows. Let's give him a big eyebrow. Let's say big unibrow. So he's going to have big bushy eyebrows. And here, so you can see that really changes the expression. You can even put bags under his eyes a little bit if you want to. Put inside of the ears. If you wanted to define the lips a little bit more, you can do that. Define the nose. If you want to put shading under the nose, you can do that. So you have a little bit more freedom to shade that in and so forth. So that's where we're starting today. You're using the proportions. You're going to draw 5 different characters. And then in the next one, we're going to talk about emotions, drawing different kinds of emotions and expressions on the faces of your characters.